There are 1,000 stories about a physically or emotionally weak character who acquires powers and becomes a badass strong enough to overcome their villains and obstacles. For me, however, there is one character who in particular stands out as a very good example of this trope, who is explored in an interesting and thorough way. A couple of years ago, I did a video on why I thought Buffy the Vampire Slayer is the greatest female superhero of all time, and I enjoyed making such a statement to the point that I knew I'd have to do another character from the Buffyverse eventually. Well, here we are, and given the title and thumbnail of this video, you know that I'm going to talk about Willow Rosenberg. This video is not going to be just me gushing about Willow Rosenberg, but will also serve as a little guide on how to write meek characters who eventually become mighty, so whether you're a Buffyverse fan or not, there is hopefully going to be something within this video for you. Having said that, I will need to spoil heavily for Angel, Buffy, and everything surrounding the shows, so if you haven't already, I would heavily recommend you go and watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Come on guys, it's only 7 seasons and like 140 episodes. You got this. Last bit of housekeeping before I get started, but similar to what I said in the Buffy video, I am more than aware of the allegations and behaviour of Joss Whedon. I can personally separate the art from the artist, and for me, although he created this character, he is not solely responsible for her. Buffy had a whole array of writers and directors and creatives who contributed to Willow's development throughout the 7 seasons, and honestly, much of the charm of the character comes from Alison Hannigan herself. With that now out of the way, let's now take a look at why Willow Rosenberg from Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a fantastic example of the Meek Who Become Mighty archetype. I'm John from the Author's Anvil, and I hope you enjoy. Let's start with a spoiler-ish overview of Willow's character. At the start of Season 1, Willow Rosenberg is your stereotypical shy, nerdy high schooler. Although intelligent and having a heart of gold, she is at the bottom of the social ladder. Buffy sees Willow's positive qualities right from the outset, however, and thus strikes up a fast friendship with her and best friend Xander Harris. Willow is also quickly recognised by Buffy's begrudging mentor, Rupert Giles, for her book smarts and level-headedness. Throughout the first couple of seasons, Willow's role in the Scooby Gang is twofold. She's often the damsel in distress whom Buffy must save from the freak of the week, or she's the assistant to Giles when problem solving. What she brings to the table that Giles doesn't, however, is her computer skills. Computer skills? What century did this show premiere when that was actually a unique asset? Well, back in the late 90s, commercial computers were only just becoming a thing, and something that Buffy is often not praised for enough is its forward thinking in regards to technology. For a show about medieval horrors and myths coming to life, it really did highlight the importance of technology in research and security. And not just that, but how crazy was it to have a teenage girl be the computer whiz back then? Just another nail in the coffin to the argument that we didn't have progressive characters before the 2010s. God, I love this show, why did you have to fall so far, Joss? It is only from Season 3 onward that Willow really starts to come into her own. She learns magic and deepens her romantic relationship with Oz, and then Season 4 onwards is when things get really spicy. Okay, so Willow goes to Sunnydale University alongside Buffy, breaks things off with Oz when they realise he can no longer control his werewolfness, meets Tara and discovers that she is in fact gay, or at least bi. With Tara's help, she discovers how gifted she is with magic and comes fully into her own as the Scooby Gang's witch by the end of Season 4. For the rest of Willow's arcs, I shall leave that for later on in the video. I wanted this to just be a high-level view of Willow's character, who she is, and what her role in the show is. To summarise, on the face of it, Willow is your typical meek character who will eventually leave her shell and insecurities behind to become the best version of herself. But of course, there is so much more to her than just that, and the rest of this video will now explore why. By fans and in-universe characters alike, Willow is often described as the spirit of the Scooby Gang. But why is this? Surely the spirit of the Scooby Gang is in solving magical mysteries and slaying monsters. Since Willow only does one of these things in the early seasons, and mostly in an assistative role, how can this be? Surely either Giles or Buffy would be better suited to this title, especially Buffy since she's the titular character. Well, Willow being the spirit of the gang is not just a reference to her eventual witchiness. I think that Willow represents the importance of friendship and acceptance the most out of all the Scoobies. It is a huge thing for a popular girl like Buffy to befriend someone like Willow in Season 1. As we talked about, she is nerdy, awkward, and not conventionally attractive by 90s high school standards. We can see how popular characters such as Cordelia treat Willow, and many of us audience members can hugely relate to such experiences. Through Buffy's friendship, however, Willow not only gets to go on cool adventures and fight monsters and shit, but she also gets the taste of true friendship that's so critical for people like her. Although her and Xander are childhood friends, her crush on him prevents them from having the kind of platonic relationship that she gets to experience with Buffy and Giles. Willow finally finds a place where she belongs and is loved within the Scooby Gang in a way that I don't think any other character craves as much as she. Xander is of course a close second, but I don't think he has as much insecurity to overcome in the early seasons as Willow does. That comes later. Buffy is littered with themes and metaphors about growing up and surviving teenage and young adulthood. Willow's struggle with having a community that she feels valued in is one of the most relatable things in the entire show, and I think that initially she is thus the character who gets the most emotional benefit from being part of the Scooby Gang. It is for this reason that she is the gang's spirit, and this is the really neat thing about her character. Willow herself feels that she is a meek person, but she doesn't realise that she is actually mighty in the sense that her spirit best represents the emotional importance of the Scooby Gang. This sets her apart from other meek characters in other shows, who can often fall into the traps of either being the constant damsel in distress for the main character to save, and/or comic relief. If you're writing a meek character then, I would advise you think about how they can have a hidden or less obvious mightiness about them that isn't just them being a cheerleader for the main characters. Similar to the comic relief characters who I talked about in my other video, what can your meek character thematically represent, or what heart can they have that goes beyond a comedic punchline? This can add a layer of depth not just to their character, but to the ensemble as a whole, as they can bounce off of the other characters and really make the others feel valued and accentuate their strengths. So let's talk about Willow's most interesting character arc that she goes on during Season 6, Dark Willow. Okay, so we start the season with Willow bringing Buffy back from the dead, which is of course no mean feat. After this success, we see her at her most powerful. She uses magic without even thinking, and with Giles' absence, she becomes the definitive source of all things sorcery, with Tara now being in the assistive role. Now, a lot of the time when the Meek become mighty, it is a conclusion of their arc. We watch the satisfaction as a weak character finds the strength to overcome their physical and/or emotional hurdles, then that's it. Hurrah! Character arc over. But Willow's arc is certainly not over in Season 6. In fact, it is only halfway done. It turns out that the miracle she performed on Buffy was actually an act of non-consensually dragging Buffy away from heaven, which sends our titular character into a horrific depression. The ease with which she performs magic ends up making her addicted to it. Tara challenges her to go just a week without using magic, and she fails miserably, leading to their breakup. When Warren accidentally murders Tara and Willow is unable to save her, Willow completely loses control of her emotions and turns into the worst version of herself. This almost leads to the destruction of the entire world, and it is only the power of friendship, quite literally, that brings her back to normalcy. So there's a lot to unpack here. On the surface, Willow may appear in Season 6 to be a million miles away from the frumpy nerd in Season 1. She is confident, in a steady relationship, and is exceptionally powerful. This Willow would of course never allow a girl such as Cordelia throw shade her way, and if she did, she'd make sure she'd regret it. But of course, if we dig a little bit deeper, this is not the case. Willow becomes addicted to magic because deep down she is still very insecure about her usefulness and physical vulnerability. Showing off her magical ability at every turn is her way of constantly trying to prove that she is not Season 1 Willow, but this new, better Willow. Never in her wildest dreams did Season 1 Willow ever imagine that she could have such power. When she gets it, she understandably abuses it. I am no psychologist or medical professional, I'm just a regular guy who's deeply fascinated by humanity. But in my experience, and to the shame of my personal experience, when deeply hurt and insecure people finally get that means to overcome their boundaries, overcome their difficulties, they often overcorrect. The fear of returning to how they used to be is a very powerful motivation to keep pushing the limit of their new power or abilities, and this unfortunately can lead to some nasty consequences if they are not emotionally mature enough to be responsible with such power. Willow's descent into darkness is completely understandable and relatable, except wanting to destroy the whole world. Yeah, that's a bit much. Love. She is still a young woman, she is still someone who has barely travelled outside of her hometown, and the only adult role model she has decided to commit his own Brexit of America. There was really no one else to properly keep her in check except for other emotionally volatile young adults, which is of course a recipe for disaster. The point that we can learn from Willow in our own writing is this. What happens when our meek characters do become mighty? Is that really the end of their character arc, or is there another interesting story that you can tell that involves their newfound confidence and or abilities? Perhaps you can write an overcorrection, like in Willow's case, or perhaps your meek character is pushed too much into the spotlight and has to deal with the public image of being mighty. As always, there are 1,000 different directions you can go, so just have a think about what other stories can be told when your meek character becomes mighty. I want to lastly talk about the context before, during, and after Willow's appearance on the screen, and why I think this meek character in particular is so beloved to this day. As with pretty much every character in Buffy, Willow is written with relatability and depth, and rarely does she actually fall into the pitfalls of the stereotype she represents. Unlike in shows such as The Big Bang Theory, where nerds and socially awkward folk are there just to be mocked, Willow is a character that is actually supposed to be sympathized with. She is an authentic representative of the awkward, nerdy person that so many of us were in high school, and so to see her meekness turn into mightiness is truly satisfying. She truly makes us believe that we can make friends, that we can succeed, that we can be part of something great. Looking within the context of the late 90s, it was quite a rare thing to have a female nerdy character represented so positively on screen. And to make it even more significant, this was a female character depicted as being good with computers. Yes, we had Star Trek, but the female characters in those shows were military types and adults. Willow, on the other hand, was a teenage girl set in our world, being competent at a boys' game at a time when computers were only just coming into schools. Inspiring stuff indeed. And then, of course, let's address the even more controversial part of her character, her sexuality. Willow and Tara had one of the earliest positive depictions of homosexuality put on mainstream television, and having them even kiss was a huge deal back then. Willow was not the horny, slutty, bisexual stereotype that we saw in media such as Rent. She was not just a token minority used to tick a few diversity boxes. She was a fully fleshed out character who just happened to discover that she was gay, like so many other teenagers at that age. Her sexuality was not used as a soapbox or to push some aggressive agenda. Her sexuality was used to give a marginalized and meek demographic of people a mighty role model to follow, and to, of course, explore more themes of magic and the excitement of the unknown within her character. Willow is one of the only characters who I can unironically describe as stunning and brave without cringing massively, because back almost 30 years ago, she really was. Within the context of the late 90s and early 2000s, having a meek character who becomes mighty while exploring a deviant sexuality and being a frickin' nerd at the same time was a very bold choice, and thankfully it paid off massively. Now, what can we learn from this context? Well, I think if you want to insert a diverse character without making them insufferable, then you've got to ensure you're doing several things. First of all, make them likable and down on their luck. Second of all, don't make their diversity their entire character. Willow being LGBT is significant, but her actual character arcs are not affected by this trait of hers. If Tara had been a male character, it would have changed nothing about her journey into witchhood and becoming Dark Willow. Willow was already an interesting and fully fleshed out character before she discovered her true sexuality, and the writers were not bashing us over the face with this diversity. Do not make your meek character diverse and have that diversity be their only defining character trait. It is lazy and bloody annoying. And lastly, I would say it is essential to treat your meek characters with respect. Don't just have them be comic relief or the constant damsel in distress. Write them scenes where they're taken seriously and have some heart on display. Willow is beloved because right out the gate she's established as a fiercely loyal companion to Buffy, and her skill with computers is appreciated early on by the other characters. Again, none of this is revolutionary. Think about the context in which we're living in, think about how your meek character can add to the conversation, but do not make that their only personality trait or function within the show. Do not use them to bash your audience around the head pointlessly with your politics. So, what lessons can we learn from looking at Willow Rosenberg's character? Writing a meek character who becomes mighty isn't just about having a down on your luck character, giving them cool powers, and then going, yay, that's awesome. If part of an ensemble, the meek character can be a super good way for showing the spirit of the group. When written relatably, with respect, the meek character can also become an empowering bastion for the audience to rally behind. And lastly, a meek character can be a great vehicle to push the cultural context in which they are written, although you've got to make sure that you do groundwork and not make that their only purpose in the story. The Meek Who Become Mighty trope is a personal favourite of mine, one that I always enjoy reading and watching, but I think Willow Rosenberg at this moment takes the cake for this trope. Aside from everything I've talked about in this video, Willow is just a wonderfully integral part of the show filled with drama, excitement, and wit. She's a mediator between the different characters, offering a bridge between the curmudgeonly Giles and the brash Buffy, and Alison Hannigan just does an incredible job of making this character endlessly endearing. That's all I've got for today. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I hope you enjoyed hearing about my little gushing about Willow. If you want more of that, then check out my Buffy character deep dive. Or if you're looking for other fictional musings for your curious soul, then check out the rest of my channel, where I talk about everything from superheroes, to film, to anime, to writing philosophy. I've got it all. Hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll catch you in the next one.